The symposium is sponsored by Massachusetts Access to Recovery, a project of Advocates for Human Potential, Inc. ATR is funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Addiction Services. Thank you to AHP and BSAS for your support. And now I'd like to turn it over to Casey Tiefenworth, who is our Career Building Initiative Program Manager for Access to Recovery. Casey?
Thank you, Joe. We have an excellent group of speakers today representing both the fields of workforce development and education. First, we will hear from Ramona Rivera-Reno, who is the Executive Director of Reentry and Recovery at MassHire Holyoke and the Regional Director for the Hampden County Reentry Partnership. Ramona co-created the Paths to Empowerment curriculum, which you will all hear about shortly, and Ramona has served as a consultant to Access to Recovery since 2010. Following Ramona, we will hear from Doreen Treacy. Doreen has served as the Vice President of Career Services for MassHire Downtown Boston since 2014 and oversees the Financial Opportunity Center at JBS. Doreen is a nationally recognized social innovator and thought leader who has 25 years experience in creating economic pathways for Massachusetts residents. Following Doreen, we'll hear from Joey Cuzzi. Joey has been the Executive Director of New England Culinary Arts Training, or NECAT for short, in Boston for the past 6 years. Joey's background includes 20 years in nonprofit management and 25 years in communications in the public sector. And finally, we'll hear from Vinny Reggae. Vinny is the Dean of Business and Experiential Education at Bristol Community College. Vinny is an accomplished post-secondary educator and an administrator who brings with him more than 15 years of extensive pedagogical experience. Next slide. Thank you. So to kick us off, we will first hear from Ramona Rivera-Reno.
To be here today and glad you could join us. I'm going to start my presentation with a little demographics of MassHire Holyoke. Holyoke is a small Western town located in Holyoke in Western Massachusetts, and the population is about 40,000. I'm going to look at our 2019 demographics and just highlight a few of them. I chose 2019 because our demographics are different due to the pandemic. So in 2019, we served 8,725 customers. 45% of them were white, 49% of them were Hispanic, 50% of them were between the age of 22 and 45 years old, 24% had less than high school education, 34% had a high school diploma, 13% had some colleges, and 29% had other credentials. Since 2003, MassHire's Hampden County Workforce Board, MassHire Holyoke, and MassHire Springfield, in collaboration with the Hampden County Sheriff's Department, have been the leading pioneers in creating a successful reentry and recovery model to serve ex-offenders. We have served 28,516 justice involved people over the last 17 years. We are currently facilitating 175 hours of groups in the jail. Our hope was that if we build a relationship with them while they were still incarcerated, that we would follow up with us at the career centers upon release. We're excited to say they have over the years. 50% of the participants who worked with us while they were incarcerated obtained employment and had a retention rate of 60% for 3 months. If they followed up with us upon release at the Career Center, the number significantly increased to 77% obtained employment, and the retention rate was 76% after 3 months. May I have the next slide, please? Hampden County's Reentry Recovery Program's holistic approach has proven effective due to strong collaboration with many partners over the years. Given that 80% of returning citizens we serve have a substance use disorder, partnering with our community agencies that offer the wraparound service in these 4 domains has been vital to our success. The Hampden County Sheriff's Department All-Inclusive Support Services and Access to Recovery's program enable us to serve the whole person. In 2010, I met Rebecca Starr and her team and quickly learned that ATR was all about collaboration and could fill in the gaps of services that we were not able to offer. ATR's forward-thinking and multi-level array of services, combined with our specialized menu of workforce development program, is the perfect recipe for success for the reentry and recovery population. Next slide, please. On January 30th, 2011, the first referrals started in Springfield and Boston. Early employment services included referrals to America's Job Centers, which is MassHire, and one-stop career centers one-on-one meetings. Paths to empowerment evolved from the need to address employment in group format. We realized that people in recovery with substance use disorders faced tremendous challenges as we needed more than the traditional work readiness groups and the career centers offered. In collaboration, next slide. Sorry about that. We realized that people in recovery from substance use disorder face tremendous challenges, the need for more than the traditional work-ready groups that this career center offered. In collaboration with MassHire Holyoke and MassHire Boston, we created a 2-week program called Paths to Empowerment to serve as the first step in preparing participants to enter industry-specific job training. As a foundation program, the goal of PT is to provide participants with social, behavioral skills they need to participate fully in education and training courses, secure employment, build personal relationships, and make informed decisions. Since then, ATR has expanded from 2 cities to 5, standardized the curriculum across all sites, trained facilitators to deliver curriculum and how to work with people in recovery from substance use disorder, added a cohort in Spanish, adapted the in-person curriculum of online learning after the pandemic hit, and added an additional week that focused on building self-confidence. The topics that we covered in the 2 weeks was career readiness, career exploration, job search preparation, online job search, criminal offender record information, interviewing skills, communication interaction, money matters, and job retention. Next slide, please. Alive and free, live up to your future economic opportunity. I've been asked many times why we added the first week and why it was necessary to do so when employment and recovery are not covered in it at all. I created the first week of Paths to Empowerment to build self-confidence. Lack of self-confidence is something that most humans experience at one point in their lives, including me. I knew it was important to address the whole person, mind, body, and soul. The whole person approach is a holistic method that accounts for the individual's life and their vision of self and offers up the resources that person needs to make the vision real. I realized early in my career that in facilitating employment groups in the jail, that we needed to help people we serve validate that they are more than, not less than, and they deserve more out of life. In response to a challenge I had from one of my groups that I did, the challenge was I did not understand what they were going through. I wrote a poem that I'm going to read to you. Alive and free, live up to your future economic opportunity. Alive and free is up to me. The choices I make is what it will be. We are strong men and women living a life of confusion caused by our own illusions. Life is there for the taking. We are responsible for the making. Living up to your future economic opportunity is a concept that is new to me. The hopes and dreams of what can be is an unknown reality. The goals of secrets of success and the cause of our duress. Each day is a new beginning, a chance to raise the bar, but we are afraid to dream too far. We know what we know from where we came from, and it is what it is. We cherish our past of gifts with all its joys and sorrows of yesterday's tomorrows. Our triumphs are owed to the beauty and strength of our mind, body, and soul. Self-esteem, self-confidence, self-love, this is the essence of Alive and Free. Today is the first day of the beginning of Alive and Free. It's time to start living up to your future economic opportunity. Dreams do come true. So we read this the very first day of class. And what it does, Alive and Free has activities designed to deal with the thinking, feeling, and attitudes and behaviors in relationships. Participants are active mentally, emotionally, and physically, even online. Sometimes we have a dance party via Zoom. Throughout the time of the program, economic opportunity is not just the financial well-being, it's the physical, emotional, and spiritual bank accounts that matter most to our participants. As students progress through this exercise and presented in P2E curriculum, they gain a greater awareness of their present situation and how their thinking and their values affect their lives. They gain increased understanding of and practice in using tools of communication, goal setting, and problem solving. They learn to accept themselves as they are, a composite of feelings, thoughts, attitudes, values, and beliefs. They find this acceptance as energy release, and given the new renewed energy, they are encouraged to work toward new goals which bring their desired change to their lives. So as you can see, we have a very busy 4 days that we go through. They overcome their fears. We talk about choice and consequence. We do a leadership compass. It's very interactive. And there's all motivation interview. There's no yes or no answers. It's about talking and thinking and processing themselves. Next slide, please. So where are we today? Today, I'm happy to say we have 19 trained facilitators across 5 cities, 9 men, 10 women, 5 bilingual facilitators, offer 8 cohorts per month and an average of 96 participants in total monthly. Cohort for Spanish speakers every month. We have biweekly facilitators meeting where we get together and share ideas and concerns, and ongoing professional development offered by ATR. This program when people graduate from this program, they talk openly and say they have definitely changed their lives by being a part of this. And the first week was one of their favorite parts of it because it really allowed them to be vulnerable and learn. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Doreen Treacy, our next speaker.
Hi there. So first slide. As research shows and has been discussed at length today, employment consistently emerges as a goal among people in recovery. And employment is one of the best predictors of a positive treatment outcome because it strengthens a commitment to recovery. Employment has both economic and non-economic benefits for recovering individuals. In addition to its legitimate income producing potential, work provides 1, structure, and 2, an opportunity for social connections, in particular, socialization with non-substance users who can function as role models. So embedding the program into the Career Center system is an example of a cross-sector partnership between the workforce system and the substance use disorder system that leverages the expertise of both and produces quantifiable outcomes for individuals in recovery. Next slide. Just to provide a quick overview of the one-stop Career Center system nationally and locally, MassHire Downtown Boston, my Career Center, is part of the National American Job Centers Network. There are 2,400 American Job Centers nationwide, all coordinated by the U.S. Department of Labor. They were established under the Workforce Investment Act and reauthorized in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act of 2014. In Massachusetts, the 29 MassHire Career Centers operate under the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, Department of Career Services. They coordinate communication and ensure that the system is operating in compliance with the federal funding requirements. 3 years ago, the Massachusetts system rebranded under the name MassHire to show the interconnectedness of the state workforce system. Prior to that, there were 29 career centers operating under 29 different names. All centers are now named MassHire with a geolocator in their name to make it easy for customers to find their local center. Other states are similar in this regard. For example, in Florida, the system is branded under Career Source Florida. So the reach of the Career Center system really sets up a perfect framework for partnership. And of course, ATR recognized this potential and is leveraging it by offering the Path to Empowerment program through this system in Massachusetts. Next slide. American Job Centers are designed to provide a full range of assistance to job seekers and employers under one roof. Just a little more detail about the MassHire Career Center system in Massachusetts. On the job seeker side, MassHire Career Centers collectively serve 100,000 job seekers each year. We offer employment and training services for job seekers, including workshops and webinars, resume review, mock interviews, training vouchers, and job matching. And on the employer side, the statewide system serves over 13,000 employers annually. We post jobs, host recruitment events, provide referrals of candidates, and provide labor market information. Again, this data is specific to Massachusetts, but the services offered by the Massachusetts system are similar to services offered at American Job Centers across the country. Next slide. Working with the ATR program is really a privilege for a career center because it provides the opportunity to work intensively with individuals who are among the most in need of career services. Since 2011, our Career Center has assisted more than 1,500 individuals through the Path to Empowerment program. As Ramona explained, P2E is a 3-week program that addresses the unique issues and barriers facing people with addiction experience. The program includes an introduction to employment and financial literacy, information on occupational outlooks, and practical supports for implementing a successful job search. P2E participants also engage in guided career exploration, participate in mock interviews, and practice professional behaviors to prepare for the workplace. Our organization was interested in partnering with ATR on the P2E program for several reasons. One, we knew we were already serving people with substance use disorders, but they weren't identified within the Career Center, and we weren't doing anything to specifically target them. Two, generally speaking, career centers are high volume, lower touch, but the P2E is just the opposite, and it's very effective. It's a very effective approach. We wanted to increase our capacity to serve this population with higher touch programming. Three, we also wanted to increase knowledge of substance use disorders with MassHire staff. And finally, as an added benefit, P2E is an extra source of income for the career centers that is more flexible than the federal funding sources. ATR pays tuition per participant with some cushion for the center to enhance services and overall increase capacity. Next slide. The pandemic forced changes in the delivery model. Like countless other programs delivering in-person services, we needed to pivot quickly to deliver a remote P2E program. The primary barrier that needed to be addressed was the technology divide. The ATR program mitigated this by purchasing computers and hotspots for program participants to enable them to take the class remotely. Another barrier was digital literacy. Upskilling participants to use the technology provided was necessary to make the class accessible. Hiring a second facilitator for each class who could focus exclusively on assisting participants with their technology issues proved to be a remediation strategy that worked well, allowing the classes to go on. Finally, we had staff who needed to become proficient in delivering content virtually. There was a need to develop mastery in the Zoom platform to accommodate breakout rooms, polls, and other interactive tools to make the student experience engaging. And while we had talented facilitators, there was a technology gap for some, so we paired more tech-savvy staff with less tech-savvy staff to facilitate. We will continue to offer a remote cohort in tandem with a classroom-based cohort going forward because we have seen that this model creates accessibility for some individuals, expanding those who can be served. This is another universal takeaway. And why was this pivot important for the field? Well, because both training and job search take a long time, and any time lost because of the pandemic added to the wealth gap across the Commonwealth and the country. Continued activities toward job attainment ensured that when job seekers were ready, they could jumpstart their job search process right away. Next slide. Working with the ATR PTE program marked the first time in the history of our agency that we delivered targeted programming to people in recovery. So what have we learned through this work that has informed our agency-wide work? Well, there are certainly both micro and macro lessons. On the service delivery level, the program reinforces what we know about best adult education practices, but through the nuanced lens of the recovery community. And 4 areas emerge as worthy of note in this regard. The first is staffing. Keeping the ratio of staff to participants lower than a typical classroom and hiring diverse staff to reflect the student demographics is critically important because it creates the container in which the class can organize itself. On the curriculum front, taking the curriculum seriously with a nod to Ramona, but creating space for banter and humor and allowing the unique life experiences of program participants to inform the direction of the class. No P2E class flows exactly like another due to the composition of the class, which may require a deeper dive into some components and a lighter touch on others. The curriculum is the backbone, but participants really drive a lot of the classroom experience. As far as accountability, holding participants accountable for both their own commitment and for the group as a whole is critical, as is creating an environment where participants can build on their experience and really become more than their history or diagnosis. And finally, recognition. Taking care to ensure each cohort feels a sense of accomplishment and pride after completing P2E, and acknowledging next steps, whether that be further training or employment. At our graduation ceremonies, we always note what the next step is for each participant as they receive their certificate, and this best practice is definitely replicable. Next slide. On a more macro level, our agency gained a greater appreciation of the lost opportunity in the labor market. The program made us much more aware of how much talent remains on the sidelines when people with substance use disorder are kept out of the workforce. The economy of the region needs this skilled labor, and this population can bring, and the opportunities we're creating through PTE meets this labor market demand of the moment. We also gained an awareness that we could be doing more to advocate for reforms and resources to support individuals in recovery. Engaging with individuals in recovery made us an active proponent of reforms that reduce the barriers to engagement in the workforce through advocacy and policy, both at the state and federal levels. Seeing how measurable the evolution of participants is from class 1 to graduation is powerful. Just 3 weeks changes the trajectories of people's lives in quantifiable ways, and we need to be a bullhorn to bring the knowledge of this transformation to legislators and others in decision-making positions. Finally, having experienced the positive outcomes of this partnership, we are motivated to do more for individuals with substance use disorder, and we stand ready to do it. Next slide, please. For individuals in recovery, there may be barriers to obtaining and sustaining gainful employment due to a prior criminal record, negative educational histories, a digital divide, gaps in employment history, financial complications, and stigmatization of those with a history of addiction, among other factors. The P2E program seeks to mitigate these impacts by partnering across systems as an effective way to address these employment barriers, and the results speak to themselves. You can see these student testimonials that we've got on the screen. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Joey Cuzzi, the Executive Director of NECAT. Joey?
Thank you very much. It's a privilege for me to be here, especially since our work and our collaborations with organizations like ATR and MassHire have really informed our program over our short duration and have changed us so much for the better. Next slide. Since we opened our doors in 2013, NECAT's training model has been focused on helping adults transition from unemployment into living wage careers that provide a pathway to financial independence and a more stable life. Culinary was chosen for training as the food services industry in Boston was exploding and had a high demand for trained workers at every level. Plus, the hospitality industry in Boston has always been one of opportunity, especially for adults who have been marginalized from the workforce due to anything from language barriers, previous incarceration, and especially those in recovery. The majority of our students are residents of the Boston neighborhoods of Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan, neighborhoods that are 90% people of color, and neighborhoods that experience disproportionate high rates of substance use, incarceration, and housing insecurity, among other issues. When we opened as a traditional culinary training program modified from a classical style curriculum. It was totally skills-based and reflected the performance expectations of a fast-paced professional kitchen. Promptness, attendance, respect for the chef were paramount, and students were dismissed regularly if they didn't fall in line with the schedule of the chef's instructions. But in 2013, our students were primarily unemployed adults who met the financial guidelines for classification of a low-income individual, and their primary barrier to unemployment was their primary barrier to successful employment was their inability to pay for vocational skills training like NECAT offered. Next slide, please. However, our student composition changed dramatically in the intervening years as unemployment in Boston plummeted to an all-time low in 2018, and our new enrollees showed multiple challenges, including reentry into the community from incarceration or in substance use recovery. Nearly 1/3 of NECAT students were in recovery from a substance use disorder, 34% were court involved, and another third were homeless. And sometimes there were a combination of all three. At the same time, we saw our graduation rates decline, as well as the number of graduates who actually obtained employment. It was an alarming trend, and our outcomes were showing us that a correction was much needed. So in a very purposeful way, we started to seek advice from our partners like ATR and others in recovery to better understand the special needs of our participants. And we also had to uncover and honestly face our own misunderstandings and biases towards substance use and shift our culture. Next slide, please. We started with staff training from the Lionheart Foundation, which taught us the widespread impacts of trauma on an individual. Our eyes were open to the concept of a trauma-informed approach and how embracing this philosophy would be essential to the success of those in recovery or reentering the community from incarceration. We responded by integrating knowledge about trauma into everything we did, our policies, procedures, and our practices. For example, prior to our training, we were fixated on accountability. Our staff would argue routinely about how could our students obtain and keep a job if they couldn't show up at NECAT on time, if they fell asleep in class, if they had, if they weren't attending or they were late regularly. We were unforgiving and we dismissed the students from our program as a result. But we learned how to reframe the challenges our students were facing. We learned through motivational interviewing, and instead of greeting our students in a confrontational manner, we asked questions. We tried to get to the subtext of why they were behaving the way they did, why they were late, why they were missing class. We tried to see what was going on. And this is where we found out what was at the heart of what was holding our students back. Without doing this, we would have never been able to move forward. We would have continued to dismiss students, and instead, we developed individualized contracts with them, which kept them in the program. At the same time, we had to identify our own triggers. What behaviors of our students set us off and caused us to treat them differently, maybe less respectfully as a result. So there was a lot of introspection on the part of the staff, and this willingness to be honest helped us all move forward, and it was a massive culture shift, which actually resulted in some people moving on because it was hard for them to start to think differently about the way we were training our students. In another example, our students will always fall apart close to the end of completing the program. Why we were so confounded when they were so close to graduating, such a wonderful milestone that they would falter. We reached out to ATR and were trained in their Navigating Transitions program, which helped us realize that even happy transitions, like finally graduating and getting employment, would stress their sobriety. So we started to build this into our program early on, started to lead up to the transitions that were going to affect them. Excuse me. And we started to address it in our career services activities at the very beginning of our program, so that these transitions did not become a problem for them and that uneasiness could be served in some manner. And self-care was important for our own faculty, who were starting to feel the stresses of bearing the burdens of all of the problems that our students faced. Next slide, please. Our staff was lean, and though we incorporated social emotional learning and life skill workshops into our curriculum, our students needed more. With a grant, we were able to pilot a case management model where every student was assigned a case manager to guide them through any issues that arose during their tenure with us. Staff who would go to court with them, connect them to outside resources, listen to them and counsel them. This has become integral to our students. One is a traditional case manager with training in cognitive behavioral therapy who conducts workshops on site, one-on-one counseling sessions to assist them with emotional regulation, listening skills, anger management, and mindfulness. And the other is a street worker who has worked in Boston for decades and is connected to neighborhood resources, helping students address basic needs like getting new driver's licenses, identifications, housing and healthcare. He even stands up with them in court when they need an advocate to seal their queries or be released from probation. The last alignment of our training model was one that's most important and includes our employer partners. We convened a council to get them to understand that the challenges our students faced weren't going to magically disappear once they were employed. And while there were employers who shared our vision and values, it was critical that they embrace our population with all of the challenges they faced because they were fast becoming the backbone of the industry. And if they were plagued by high turnover, a correction in their environment was necessary, as well as a correction in ours. Kitchens that were once notorious for staff who convene for after-hours drinking and unwinding into early morning are far less common today. Many kitchens are run by chefs in recovery who value a sober workforce. We prioritize those employers who could offer predictable schedules, a slower pace, earlier closings, flexibility on start and ending times. And our career services team paid particular attention to our students in recovery through the interviewing processes, helping them select the best environment to suit their personal skills, temperament, living arrangements, even their transportation capabilities. For example, we learned that our students in recovery do best in hospital settings, long-term care facilities, schools, nursing homes, things of that sort. Where the pace is slower, they do better. And our upcoming, what we're working on now post-pandemic, is getting our employers to work with us immediately to solve any problems or red flags that are identified early on in those first critical few weeks and months of employment. We got them to ask the same questions. What's going on? How can we resolve this? How do we stay in touch so that a simple miscommunication between a head chef and an employee doesn't result in them walking off the job and losing this opportunity? Finally, the pandemic forced us to reduce our program duration and class size, which has been well suited to individuals in recovery. A smaller class size allowed for more individualized attention by the instructors and case managers, so we modified our program without losing any competencies from 16 to 12 weeks. That was a pandemic first, and we've decided to keep it because it works so well. And staying open during the pandemic helped us understand that the personal connection with our students is our magic sauce. We consider ourselves a family, and this is most appreciated by our students in recovery, as so many of them have frayed their own relationships with their families and are trying to rebuild them. One recent graduate said to us that he felt like we were an extension of his large Italian family, who he missed very much as they lived a distance away while he was still living in a sober house. He made for us what he called his Sunday dinner as his final project. And he was so proud and pleased, and he was so happy. And we were so delighted when he had obtained a great job with a good starting salary and benefits. But it was important for him to stay connected, and he has ever since. So in summary, I believe that NECAT's holistic approach to job training, influenced by our partnerships with ATR, have netted a great result. Just prior to the pandemic, we had a 65 to 70% completion rate, 77% employment rate, and an 80% job retention rate overall, which is pretty good for the population we serve. I believe that what sets us apart is our willingness to see the entire picture of our students' life experience and understand that they need more than just the technical culinary skills to establish a stable and independent life. If we empower them to strengthen all aspects of their life, and we're here for support, when employment comes, it generally lasts. Thank you, and it's my pleasure to now introduce Vinny Reggae from Bristol Community College.
Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about ATR program at Bristol Community College. It is indeed my honor and privilege. So at Bristol, we have been offering a program in office support for ATR students since January of 2020. And it is basically ably led by the chair of our office administration program, Professor Carol Martin from academic affairs side. So let me briefly talk about why was Bristol interested in working with ATR to begin with. So when this opportunity was presented for us to work with ATR in office support, we really wanted to get on with it. And there were primarily three reasons for that. Of course, we wanted to be a part of something that made a difference in the lives of folks that have substance abuse disorder. The second reason was basically giving them a chance to earn micro-credentials through our non-credit program offerings. And the last reason is basically that providing them with an opportunity to use this as stackable credentials and earn college credits. And I will talk more about that as a part of this presentation later. So office support program is also sort of like conducive to adult learners. And we thought that ATR students can certainly benefit from earning a credential in it. So how do we recruit students? We basically recruit students through P2E programs that most of the panelists before me spoke about. which is sort of like a career readiness program offered through ATR. So Professor Martin goes and makes a presentation about the program and get students excited about a possibility of earning credential in office support program through ATR at Bristol Community College. So at Bristol, these classes have always taken place in one of our campuses, which is in New Bedford. And since many of the students sort of like come from that neighborhood. Last year, when the pandemic hit, we had to pivot and pause midway through our spring 2020 semester, since we could not bring students on campus. However, we brought these students back in summer of 2020, and they completed the program in hybrid modality. And this spring, we sort of like polished that entire hybrid model and basically like any lessons learned from the previous year and successfully offered that program in that modality. Next slide, please. Now, let me briefly talk about the structure of the program. So this program is offered in collaboration with Business Solutions and Partnership, which is sort of like a non-credit arm of the college. And the reason we wanted to go a non-credit route was because several students in the program do not have high school diploma or GED. And this sort of like prohibits them from taking credit-bearing courses in many instances. And this non-credit program offering sort of like equals to about 23 credits from the credit side. This is basically the second year we are offering this cohort in office support. Last year, it actually was offered as a pilot program. We learned quite a bit, as I mentioned earlier. We made changes to make the experience better for students, train the instructors, and I can confidently say the program is in much better shape now than the first time when it was offered as a pilot. And now, due to popularity of the program, very soon, as a matter of fact, starting this October, we will be offering 2 cohorts, one starting in Jan, and as I mentioned, the other one starting in October. In order to sort of like align our educational offering with ATR goals and timeline, we created a product that was 5 months long in length, where students take courses in office administration. There were a few courses in accounting, and internship is a critical component of the program now, and I will briefly speak about that as well. In the next slide, as a matter of fact. Next slide, please. So as I said, internship actually was not a part of ATR program in the first year when the program was offered at Bristol. However, due to sort of like the nature of the program, we felt very strongly that we should allow students to make a connect with the real world where they can apply the knowledge they have gathered in the classroom. Therefore, we sort of like added that internship component in the second year. Internship is a critical component given the nature of the program. Now, why is it important? It sort of like allows students to employ knowledge, their skills and competencies that they have learned in the classroom in the real world. Also allows them to sort of like bridge the gap between theory and practice, and allows them to network, show their skills to potential employers. And research shows that 86% of the interns secure employment at the place where they have completed internship. Now, as a part of the internship in the ATR program at Bristol, students were placed in several of our community partners on campus and external, where they completed 45 hours performing several tasks, working on projects and meeting all the student learning outcomes of an internship class. We had a dedicated instructor who met with them regularly, guided them, advised them. And as a part of the class, students attended weekly sessions, presented their learning experiences, created portfolios, which actually was awesome to see. So next slide, please. Now, one thing I'll tell you about Bristol Community College is that student success is paramount to us. And in order to make sure that we set them up for success, we lined up some wraparound services for them. Now, several students in the ATR program did not have access to computers and Wi-Fi. Many of them actually came from group homes. So we realized that it would pose sort of like big challenge since the modality of their classes was hybrid. So we brainstormed, and as to how we can address this with ATR, And it was decided that we should supply all students with laptops and keyboards, headsets, and MiFis, hotspots, those kind of things. And this certainly helped them to accomplish all the tasks associated with their course remotely. Transportation, that actually was a big issue for many. Many of them actually did not have enough resources to come to the campus regularly. So we purchased bus passes for them so that they can get to their classes regularly. We also hired a dedicated supplemental instructor who basically assisted the main instructor in the classroom. Supplemental instructor also conducted individualized tutoring sessions, worked with each student on one-on-one basis to help them learn the content. And this was sort of like totally different than traditional Bristol students. We sort of like never do any of these things on a regular basis. With regards to IT, Bristol students are provided with Chromebooks only if they request, whereas all ATR students are given laptops and all the other devices and other supporting services, which actually was great to see. Next slide, please. Now, let me briefly talk about how students are able to take this non-credit credential and bring that into the credit side as stackable credit. So once students complete the ATR program, they can transfer into either an associate's degree program or certificate program in office administration with the use of what we call it as CPL, which stands for credit for prior learning. Credit for prior learning basically is sort of like an opportunity to demonstrate a knowledge that students have gained through a variety of experiences, such as, I'll say, military training, corporate training, work or volunteer experiences, industry certifications, non-credit credentials, such as ATR, prior to enrolling as a credit student at Bristol. Next slide. So as mentioned before, due to popularity, we continue to offer 2 cohorts in office support program in an academic year. This fall, in addition to office support program, we also plan to introduce a program in sustainable agriculture to ATR students, since this program is also conducive to adult learners and would sort of like provide great potential for employability. And we are also are in ongoing discussion with ATR in terms of what other programs can we bring in the forte to make sure that ATR students can gain from that. So in closing, I just would like to reiterate that you have to remember that ATR is a program that is designed for individuals who have substance use disorder and who are seeking support with their recovery. The program really enables participants to create sort of like a recovery plan unique to their own needs and choose from wide range of recovery support services. So understanding the goals of the program and making sure that all your instructors and support folks buy into these goals is very important. We adopted a pathway for ATR students, which takes them from non-credit route to becoming credit students or entering into the workforce. But you can think about what best suits your needs. Does non-credit to credit make sense? Or can ATR program be directly linked to the credit side? So that's something for you all to decide for yourselves. The success of the program at ATR was predominantly based on defining the roles of each entity. It was a very complex system with several entities such as ATR, non-credit side, credit side. You have credit for prior learning. You have enrollment services. You have advising services, financial aid services, so on and so forth. Therefore, defining those roles was extremely critical. And also regular communication with all stakeholders to make sure that everyone was on the same page was also sort of like critical towards the success of this program. So this was the brief description of ATR program at Bristol Community College. And now I will pass over the mantle to Casey.
All right, thank you so much, Vinny. Really appreciate your presentation and all of the presentations from our speakers today. So we have some time for questions, and I've been monitoring the Q&A. We have some wonderful questions that have come in from the audience. So I'm going to try my best to get to all of them, and I'm going to direct them to individual speakers. So I want to start first with a question that came in about working with employers. And so Doreen, I'm going to direct this to you. The question was, how are the MassHire programs working specifically with employers to help them become supportive of those in recovery? And perhaps the question is also geared towards how are the MassHire centers in general working with employers?
Sure. Great question. So the MassHire centers work with employers. It's in many different ways, but one of the things that we do is we post jobs and we work with specific individuals at an employer who can give us more information on a position and who can serve as a point person so that we can do warm handoffs. And one of the things that we do is we check with employers to find out upfront if the positions that they are advertising or that they'd like our help in finding an employee for is Corey friendly. And we make sure that we are not setting individuals from ATR or other ones of our programs that we run up for failure with employers by connecting them, for example, with a hospital who is cannot be as Corey friendly as they might want to be. But there are other employers that are Corey friendly. In terms of educating employers, we do our best to work with employers when they come to us with their laundry list of their dream ideal candidate. And there's always obviously some level of sometimes not reality based in terms of what they're looking for. We try really hard to come back to them and give them examples of candidates that might be better candidates or might be good candidates and that have certain qualities and credentials and experience that would work. And we try to really emphasize the strengths of the individuals in the ATR program, what they can bring based on their experience and their life experience, as well as their employment experience, rather than focusing on the fact that they are individuals in recovery. So that would be our approach. I hope that answered your question. That would be our general approach to working with employers.
Great, thank you. And I think we have a session following this one about recovery ready workplaces that might dive into this question a bit more. I would encourage the audience to join that session if you've got questions about how best to bridge connections to employers. I also, in a similar vein, I want to ask Joey, actually, we have a question that just came in about whether or not you have tips or suggestions about how to find culinary employers that do not have a culture of substance use and promote substance-free workplaces. And in this particular question, the example was, is it more common in chain restaurants, small businesses, fine dining, et cetera?
Yep, another really good question. So what we've learned is right now, because the industry is so hot, right? There's so many jobs open in culinary right now that we've been able to do a different screening of our employers. We vet them first off. I heard Doreen sort of say, we also, we ask the same kind of questions. What kind of an environment do they provide? Do they allow such behavior in their restaurants? And when they do, we just take them off our list. We are very particular about who we send our students to because we want them to be successful. So right now we have the benefit of an industry that is in dire need for trained employees. So we can afford on the part of our students to be really picky and only send our students to places where I think they would value a sober workplace. And is it mostly the one-off restaurants or the chains? It all depends on who's managing the kitchen. So it's hard to generalize and say which place would be better. It just takes the phone call, the conversations with who's managing the employees at that particular place to really get a sense of what the environment's going to be.
Great, thank you so much, Joey. So I want to turn now to Ramona. This question came in, and I think this is so important given the nature of the workforce, especially now that things have sort of moved to this virtual environment because of the pandemic. So one of the questions that we received is, how are the mature workers, 50 and older? This person said, although I think we could expand this really to a lot of people that did not necessarily come up with access or training in how to use computers for a variety of reasons. Certainly we see folks who have been incarcerated for a number of years come out with low digital literacy, but So this question particularly is how are the mature workers being addressed since the pandemic, especially with digital literacy, companies working more with less than maybe beyond the ability of this generation. So I'm wondering, Ramona, can you talk a little bit about some of the adaptations that you made to the Paths to Empowerment curriculum, knowing that things had to shift virtually due to the pandemic?
Yeah, so that it was challenging when we changed the curriculum from in-person to online, because we knew that the problem would be that the individuals may not have the technology to log in, and ATR helped with that by purchasing the technology for them to borrow. And then we had to figure out like how we're going to teach them. So we had to come up with some very easy handouts that they could follow along in, and really in the handouts that we emailed to them, we had live videos. They could watch a YouTube video and slow it down and look at it. And we had to customize our curriculum to include Google Documents and other platforms that they would be using more commonly online. And we had to develop handouts on how to use Zoom. Once they pick up their equipment, we actually have a 1 hour thing. We show them how to use it in person. And then afterward, they have to log on the next day. We have an hour or so that they go over all the components of a Chromebook they're using and the different platforms that they're using and how to do it all, so that when they start class on Monday, they're able to do it. One of the big things that Massachusetts has done, we have a program called the Massachusetts Internet Connect. Doreen, is that the correct name, Doreen? And we have, MassHire Holyoke has been able to help people, about over 800 or so, or 700, get Chromebooks at no cost to them. It's an incentive for people that are working that really need it and maybe don't have the financial resources to buy a Chromebook or even get the internet. And there's some subsidies for internet. So the MassHires across the state have worked hard to connect people with those Chromebooks. Also, we've all adopted our online courses to help with, Google and Zoom and all that, so people can come on for free to any of the MassHires that are offering those courses and get trained on it. We also have one-on-one phone calls. If we have someone that really needs a lot of help, we might call them individually, get them on Zoom and walk them through the process. So we have a lot of different avenues we use to try and help the customers be successful at their job search.
Thank you. That's fantastic. It sounds like you've really done a lot to adapt the curriculum to meet the needs of participants, given sort of the digital divide that we're finding people facing. So I know that we only have a few minutes left. I've got one more question here for Vinny. So this question is about the non-credit program accommodating participants without a high school diploma. And the question is, are employers open to hiring individuals from the Bristol Community College Office Support Program if they do not have a high school diploma or GED?
So thank you so much for the question. So with regards to office support program, we only have a credit-bearing program offerings at Bristol. If students actually do not have high school diploma or GED, they can certainly go non-credit route as ATR students are going. And through internships, they can certainly are able to connect with potential employers. And one of the things that we are seeing is there is a tremendous amount of interest in our office support student on the credit side, but we actually have made a very conscious effort to bridge that gap between credit and non-credit. And moving forward, we are actually going to try and do everything possible to sort of bring all the non-credit students, ATR students, or any students that actually in a non-credit program, and bring them along the credit side, so that they actually get the same amount of exposure to the potential employers, but at the same time they actually also get a chance to transfer or seamlessly transfer onto the credit side. So we are doing both things, like giving them a chance to either enter into the workforce or moving and getting onto the credit side to earn their associate's degree or the certificate program.
Thank you so much, Vinny. So I just want to thank our presenters for joining us today to talk about the amazing work they're doing to get people in recovery into the workforce. I want to thank our audience for joining us today and for your thoughtful questions. You'll see here we've got contact information for those presenters who joined us today. And we also have some excellent presentations lined up for the rest of the day, which I hope you can join us for. Especially we're going to have some graduates of the Access to Recovery program talk about their experience and talk about the importance of employment to their recovery.
The next session, Rally Employers, begins at 1:45 Eastern. You'll access that session by clicking the schedule link on the left side of your Attendify screen. Simply locate the next session in the schedule and click. So thank you so much, and we will see you in the next session. Goodbye, everyone.